Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Take One, where we give you our first take on a movie we just saw. We just went out and saw Blinded by the Light, and today's cast is Eric, Meech, and I'm Joe. So we're going to give our first take for you guys. If you don't know, this film was directed by, forgive me if I fumble the name, Gurinder Chadha?
Sounds about right.
Yeah,
Almost. Enough. So sorry if I got it completely wrong. You may know her from other works that she's done, like Bend It Like Beckham or Angus Thongs and Perfect Snogging. So this movie, Blinded by the Light, it's about this young boy living in Britain in the late 80s.
Luton.
And it's actually based off a real story. It says that right in the beginning. It's actually inspired by a book by Sanfraz Manzoor. Hopefully I got that correct. Probably didn't. He was a British journalist, and the book it was based off of was called Greetings from Bury Park. And apparently he also helped co-write the script. So he worked on it too.
Cool.
But yeah, so it's about this young boy living in Britain, late 80s.
Who loves Bruce Springsteen.
Well, he learns to love him.
In love with him.
Yeah, the whole movie really is like a love letter to Bruce's music and how it affected this young kid and
Yes.
I guess the time, the era. But I don't want to talk anymore. Eric, what's your take on this movie? First impressions.
Well, I thought it was great. I thought it was wonderful. I noticed that throughout the movie, like the whole movie, well, not the whole movie, but like throughout the movie, I found myself smiling just about things going on, but it wasn't just all happy. It touched like a whole emotional range, from sad to angry to frustrated to happy to joyful to endearing to heartwarming, touching, all those things. I thought it had all those things. I thought it was really wonderful. I thought it was nice.
Yeah. Well, I don't think we feel completely the same way.
Which is fine.
Which is fine. Opinions, we're allowed to have them.
Movies are subjective.
Yes.
Yes, they are.
Meech, what do you think?
Well, I thought Blinded by the Light was overall like a decent movie. It wasn't a bad movie. It just wasn't my type of movie. I think this movie is for people who know who Bruce is. I had no idea who he was. This movie, just really didn't do it for me. I didn't really enjoy the story as much just because there wasn't a lot happening. In the movie, there's this kid, Javad. Is that how you say his name? Javid.
Jay.
Yeah, we're going to call him Jay on this show. So Jay is this kid. He starts off as a very socially awkward kid, and then he starts to change his attire. He starts listening to more American music. Bruce Springfield, is that his name? Springsteen. I don't know. Bruce. We'll call him Bruce. So Jay starts listening to Bruce, and he's starting to change. He's starting to become more confident in himself. And that's about it. He goes off to America to go to this college, and he goes to see Bruce in concert 150 times. I mean, that's where the story goes.
Yeah, that's a real fact.
Yeah. So the story wasn't really there for me. Like, the movie was like, it was a musical, and it was a feel-good movie. So, that's what you got. So, not a bad movie, just not my type of movie.
Mm-hmm. I think I agree with you a lot. Wasn't my cup of tea, but I didn't hate it. I enjoyed it. It was fun. I think the pacing was a little off, a little slow at times, like in that first hour.
Yeah.
You guys have no emotions. All the emotions led into one another. They led into, the frustration led to, okay, throughout the movie they had these little, fantasy musical parts. There was 3 or 4 of them throughout the movie, and they really encapsulated what Javid was going through in the movie, how he was feeling, and then the song lyrics matched what he was going through, and they made him it was his imagination of the world, and over as you do when you're a teenager, you over exaggerate things, you blow things up. So the scenes and what was going on visually was actually matching the adolescent exploding of the emotions. So he threw out his poems because he was a writer. That was a big thing. But he threw his poems outside, and they turned into a tornado. And there was all these projector lightings on the walls of the street, and the wind was blowing like crazy. But I really liked the fantastical little musical interludes because it really showed you how he was feeling. But the story to me, was more of like a classical story between two tropes of the creative versus the conventional. The father man who wants his son to stay in line and get a good job versus the kid who just wants to explore who he really is in life. That's what the story was about to me. Just a young creative kid who wanted to break out and find out who he was, and the father who just wanted to keep him in a box.
Yeah, no, I really, I liked a lot of the themes that the film explored,
yes.
like what you just said, and just a lot about, family values and learning kind of who you are. It's kind of a coming-of-age story in a way. He's growing up. He's figuring out who he is, but also learning that balance between family life and who you are individually. And then there's a whole lot of social issues going on that provided problems along the way for him.
Political and social commentary of the time.
Exactly.
Very contemporary of 1987 in Britain and Luton, or England, I should say.
But going back to what you said a little bit ago about the musical parts, I loved those parts. I thought they were awesome. And I wish there were more of them, and I wish they had been done better. Let me explain. No, I think they were really cool. I wish there had been, more choreography in those scenes. Because I didn't like the way they were edited.
Tons of choreography. They were dancing together, and they had, footstep.
No, actual, more musical type choreography.
Oh, you wanted, a whole production out of it.
It was
kinda, yeah, because it was very fantastical at those parts, and I just was expecting that to happen, and it didn't.
Yeah, it almost got there, but then it didn't. It, got, just to the precipice of being, full-out musical, and then it just stopped just short.
Yeah, and that's why I feel like those parts, I love them, but I wish they had gone that full step and just went for it. Because I think it would have been really cool if they had done that, because that would have fit in, because what were you saying earlier? The tone was
tone was very off. There's a couple of scenes where it's just, I couldn't tell if they were being serious or if they were just joking. And a lot of those scenes, they were just joking. So let me give you an example. So they're at the airport, and the security guard asks Jay, "What are you doing here?" So he says, well, I'm going to go see Bruce. And then he calls out to the other security guard. He says, "Hey, look at this guy. He's going to come all the way to America to check out Bruce." And then his friend, what's his name? Roops. Yes, Roops. His Jay's friend, Roops. He checks out his jacket and everything. He opens it and everything shows the security guard. And I thought this was going to be something about race or they're assuming something. Yeah. But then it just really shifts, because then he's like, "Yeah, go do your thing."
It's
bam, and it was okay. There's a couple of scenes where the tone just wasn't there for me, and the dialogue was just really awkward. So
I will agree on that.
Say? Yeah,
I will agree on that. The dialogue, the main character, there were some times where the dialogue was a little weirdly paced and off. Just I can't exactly explain what it was about it, but I was just thinking it's not really. The scene's not really flowing quite right with what he's saying, the words that are coming out of his mouth, and how things are going. But it didn't ruin it for me. I just kind of thought it was weird. Every now and it happened a few times earlier in the movie. It got better throughout the movie.
Yes,
towards the end of the movie, it wasn't like that at all. It was probably in the first act, there was just a little bit of awkwardness. But I think maybe it was on purpose, but it just didn't hit that way to me.
I got you.
Because the character's supposed to be awkward.
Yes.
But it just seemed more of awkward direction or bad takes or something, as opposed to the kid being awkward.
Yeah, I got you.
One of my notes that I wrote was neighbor ? There were some characters in this movie that I just feel they didn't need to exist.
Yeah.
The neighbor dude who was "Your poetry's amazing." He didn't sound like that.
I gotta disagree. Okay, I think that the old next door neighbor guy, the reason he was in there is to give the main character a win and to lift the audience spirit. Because when the neighbor guy actually was "Yeah, you go, kid, keep writing, go to college, do your thing, get your voice out there." It was the same kind of thing as with the teacher. It was a win for the character, and it kind of resonated with me as an audience member.
If I was looking at the script, I would have said, you can give all of that to the teacher. Like, the teacher can play that part, scrap the neighbor, and use the neighbor scenes to focus on something else to further the story. I think things could have been condensed and more could have been explored in other places.
But the teacher didn't go to World War II and fight against Nazis.
Well, maybe she did. She did! She did!
No, she didn't.
Yes, she did in Captain America.
Oh, true. Fourth wall break.
Is that...
Haley Atwell. I believe that's her name. We don't really know names here.
Yeah, I know. She was the lady from Harry Potter, Crimes of Grindelwald, the new Harry Potter movies.
Yeah, but she's also Captain America's girlfriend.
Oh, that was
so
just
she
asking.
Was
you didn't
Peggy.
say that.
In World, yeah,
Peggy
Peggy.
Carter. That's Peggy. Okay.
So she was in the World War II.
All right, I guess you could have
fighting
just did that.
So as I said, could have condensed that character.
As long as she was Peggy Carter.
Yeah. I liked a lot of the comedy, though. Like, there were certain scenes that were funny, like the scene where the girlfriend, don't remember her name, is bringing the kid over for dinner, and the parents, kind of like his own parents, like, they're very disconnected from, like, the world and what's actually happening and how they're perceived and how they perceive their daughter. In a way, the kids' parents are kind of similar in that way. They're both just really disconnected from what their kids are doing.
No, younger people are always way more liberal than older people. And the older people in the movie were, except for Matt's father, who was cool, the older people were all conservative, like really conservative, really strict, really stuffy people. They didn't know what was going on.
There were definitely some funny scenes. Like, there's this one opening scene where he's dropping his son off at school. You know what I'm talking about when you see it. I thought that was, like, hysterical.
Stay away from the girls. Follow the Jews.
Yes, that's what he says. It's just like, okay, that was funny.
Yeah.
And then, there were a couple of scenes that were awkward for me. Like, when they're at the lunch table and he's talking to, I believe it's...
Spoofs.
Yes, Boofs. Roops. Jay is talking to Roops, and then there's just someone dancing in the background.
Yeah, I saw that
just
too.
Like, what is going on here?
Yeah, like
that's
the
so
80s
distracting.
Really like that.
Yeah. And then there's
Probably.
another scene where they go and take the recorder and play it over the school PA. Mm-hmm. There's no talk about it. They're just sitting in the hallway. Well, not sitting. They're standing in the hallway, and you see this big window, and they just go like this. And then you're like, okay, let's go and do it. And what just happened? You didn't have any conversation about it. This awkward scene just, like, came out of nowhere, and I'm, like, confused. And there were a couple of scenes like that where it's just like, okay, why? What is going on? And, like, there's another scene where the dad is trying to get to this wedding. He's trying to go to the center to have this wedding for his daughter. Mm-hmm. And the police are like, no, you can't come in here. They're rioting. And he's like, okay, I need to go in. So then one of the NFs, I believe it's called, I don't know the acronym for it. They're Nazis.
Well, they're neo-Nazis in England, but in England they were the...
Wankers.
I'll think of it in a second.
Okay. So yes, there's a scene where one of them comes out of the riot. One of the Nazis, I'll say, one of the people come out of the riot line, and then they punch the son-in-law in the face.
Yeah.
And then
groom to be.
Right. Mind you, there's police around. Then there's another scene right after that where another guy comes up and he's just like, bam, he headbutts him. I'm just like, where did this come from? And why are the police not doing anything? I'm just like, what happened here?
Yeah, that scene played out. That scene played out like really quickly, and I think the editing, especially in that scene and other scenes too, made it hard to follow what was going on. Like going back to the tornado poem scene. I thought that was just edited in such a way where sometimes it was hard to follow where he was at and what he was doing. Like, I knew what was happening, but sometimes I had to second guess, like, wait, where are we now? And then...
It's National Front. That's what it is.
So
I think there was a punk band that was named National Front or something. Or something like that going on in the... Oh, and that's another thing I wanted to say. They probably did this. They probably paralleled this because in England right now they're having a lot of the same thing with Brexit and stuff like that, and the Trump stuff going on here in America, and the battle between how everything's so polarized. I thought it paralleled what's going on right now in the 80s with National Front, Trump supporters, and how they're just categorized as crazy racist, and they were shown as crazy racist in the movie, and then they're and like the main characters are like obviously more liberal, more open personalities to to things like that. I think that was like just a parallel.
The director in an interview I did watch earlier today, I only watched a little bit of it, But she said, I'm paraphrasing, that those were some of the things that I think inspired her to want to make this film. Also just being inspired by the book and the person who did this in real life in general. But she did mention Brexit specifically as one of the reasons. If I find that interview again, I'll try to link it down below. One thing that I really loved was the confrontation with the father later on in the film.
Yeah,
I thought that
tough.
Emotionally hit home for me. I was like, oh my god. I just really liked that scene. One character I surprisingly liked a lot was the mother.
Okay.
I thought, even though she wasn't in every scene and she didn't have a whole lot of lines, but I thought her character came through so clearly. When you saw her giving up her bracelets, that was...
Yeah, a lot of it was visual.
Yeah.
She was my favorite character.
I think so, too. I loved her. And she had such a small role, but everything she did. That scene where she has to give up her jewelry, and she goes to take her wedding ring off, and the husband is like, no, don't do it.
No. That was a good scene.
It was a really hard thing for her to do, and that also plays into, the social commentary of the times about, how everything was so hard for them. And
there aren't any jobs, and people are poor and things like that. The scene with the father, though, that actually reminded me, this scene in a lot of ways, or this movie in a lot of ways, especially that scene, reminded me of the movie Lady Bird. Because it was emotion driven, it was character driven, it was drama driven. It wasn't necessarily plot progression. So it had a lot of similar, and it was about families and coming of age and breakout creative characters. The protagonist was, both stories was a creative person that just wanted to get out of their town, go experience life, and be free of their parents. And then, there's a lot of parallels between those two movies. I thought they were both good.
I see what you're saying.
Yes, piggybacking off of the scene you were talking about with Jay and his father.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a scene where it's supposed to make the audience feel for the characters, and I didn't really start feeling for the characters until about that scene. And the scene where the wife is about to take the wedding ring off. Throughout the movie, I thought it was just using these montages of the kid being all sad to make me feel for the character, instead of using actual situations and dialogue to do that. So until about the scene where they're arguing and the son says, I don't want to be your son, that's when I really started to feel for the characters, because that was something that was really real, and some people can really feel that way, So I didn't really feel for the characters till about there.
That was late in the movie.
Yeah, very, very late in the movie. Yeah.
I wasn't bored, but it didn't have everything I wanted it to have. I wish there was more style and more flair to it, something that was a little more memorable.
I thought the whole movie was stylized.
No, I think they could have taken it one step beyond, how I was saying with the musical stuff.
Yeah, but that's what style is. Taking it one step beyond would be what you would have done, but the director's style was, I think, what we saw. I think
was
what
bland.
I don't think it was bland.
Subjectiveness.
It's subjective. Yeah. I thought it was not bland. I thought it was very stylized. I thought it was very. I wasn't bored. I was involved with all the characters the whole time. It was. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So let's start off with the character. Let's see what the movie did for the character. So, starts off as a character who is socially awkward, finding out who he wants to be. Well, he already knows who he wants to be. He wants to be a writer, but he's starting to learn more and more about himself. And then, where does he end? I'm gonna let one of you.
I don't think he knows he wants to be a writer at the beginning. He just writes in his diary because he has nowhere to put his feelings and his thoughts and his emotions.
Yeah,
and then his teacher tells him to be a writer. He's like, "You really think I could be a writer?" Mm-hmm. And then he takes it and he runs with that idea because of this newfound love of Bruce Springsteen, who's telling him to do all these things. And he ends up at a place where he's confident enough to be a writer.
He's getting paid for it.
He's getting paid for it. He's confident enough to be himself in front of a crowd of people and speak from the heart, not awkwardly, and cry in front of probably 100 people.
Maybe it was a little awkward.
Oh my goodness.
It's fine.
But he wasn't awkward. It may have gotten other people awkward, but he wasn't awkward. He knew what he was doing, and he was not ashamed. Another part I liked is just looking at the culture. I liked looking at their culture and just watching it. It's just enjoyable to me because, I didn't grow up in a family like that, very specifically, and just seeing it, it's just, I like that too.
Yeah, I know people who live in families like that, so it wasn't entirely new for me to see, but it was just it felt familiar for me to see it actually on screen, I understood it and where the family was coming from.
Yeah, it was definitely like new for me. I thought it was really cool to see that dynamic on screen because it's just things you don't think about, you know? You never know what someone's going through. And I thought this movie did a really good job at showing you what some families can be like. It doesn't have to be, they don't have to be Pakistani, it could be any family. But like, I thought the movie showed that dynamic very well.
Oh, yeah.
So I commend you, Blinded by the Light.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm going to make a meme of that. Just that. I commend you, Blinded by the Light.
Yes.
Do you want to go through and just give our final thoughts?
Yeah.
My final thought is I thought the movie was wonderful. I was delighted the whole time. It was a roller coaster of emotions and character drama, and I wasn't bored. I definitely recommend it if you like that type of stuff. Yeah, I give it a thumbs up, 9 out of 10. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Cool.
Who's next? Me? You? Okay. I liked it. Didn't love it. Didn't hate it. I liked it. It was average for me. Would I recommend it? Yeah, I think it's something people would enjoy. I think, like, especially if you're a fan of Bruce Springsteen. Especially because it's all Bruce. There may be a little too much.
There's a little too much Bruce.
Honestly.
There's too much Bruce.
Yeah. We were joking about that in the car on the way home. And also, I think it's just, like, a super relatable movie. If, for anyone, we've all been young and we've all, hopefully everyone, has had that one artist or that one song or that genre of music that really gets them and that they understand. So I think, like, that entire thing, just focusing on this one kid and his love for Bruce Springsteen, like, everyone can relate to that. And I just think that's a really beautiful thing to explore in cinema, and I really like that aspect of it.
I thought this movie was a good movie. It was not a bad movie. It just wasn't my type of movie. So, coming from any type of moviegoer, I would give this movie a thumbs up. Like, this is a great movie. It makes you feel good. But coming from someone that just wanted to see something else, I'm going to give it not a thumbs down, but like right there, or it's like I almost want to go thumbs down, but you land right there. Okay. So there you go.
I do have a question for you guys.
Yes.
Who's your Bruce Springsteen? If there was a movie that you were in, like this coming of age story, like who's your musical star? Who's narrating your life with their songs?
Man, if I had an artist who
Taylor
could narrate
Swift.
my life.
How'd you know?
Oh my.
No, I'm nothing. No, she's crazy.
It's probably got to be Incubus, very specifically the album Make Yourself, if you read the lyrics on there. Especially for, a 16-year-old trying to make himself. It's called Make Yourself.
Yes.
As mine.
I would do Prince. Prince is just a phenomenal artist, and he has some pretty crazy music, and I think that best fits my lifestyle. So my Bruce is Prince.
Not a bad choice.
So that is it for our episode of Take One on Blinded by the Light. That's our spoiler review. Let us know what you guys think down in the comments if you like this movie. If you didn't like this movie, tell us where your thumb is, up, down, maybe down here.
Diagonal-ish.
We're all like different. Also, if you don't know, we do have an Instagram. It's electriclemon_LP. I'll leave it in the description below. So if you want to follow us there, and we update people on when we're going to see a new show, so you know when a new episode is coming out, because our upload schedule is not consistent. It's just whenever we feel like going to see a movie, we'll go see
whenever a good movie comes out.
A good movie, yeah. So yeah, that's it. We will see you next time. Goodbye.
Peace out.
We have an Instagram?
We do.